Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of Rise Up the Podcast. I'm here, Dan Seibel, with Greg Beast Grenlian. We have our third host, Scotty Rogers, out of the office today.
Scotty is actually spelunking in Denmark right now. So, Scotty, good luck out there. We hope you come back with some cool stories. But hey, good for him, spelunking in Denmark.
Yeah, we're excited.
So anyway,
we're excited to hear about his trip. If you want to, make sure you write him a postcard or comment on his Instagram to let him know, you're thinking about him. But man, we have an action-packed episode coming up for you guys. We have so much to catch up on in the world of PLL with a Sixes recap, as well as all this free agency movement. We also have a ton to catch up on in the world of college lacrosse. My Villanova Wildcats and Greg's Penn State Nittany Lions are crushing it right now, and we love to see that. We'll call it the Rise Up Podcast Bump. And we'll give a shout out to Scotty's Notre Dame Irishmen. They're sitting pretty right now, I think, at 2 in the country.
I told you guys before season.
They're a wagon. They're a wagon. And we have a very, very special interview with lacrosse legend Eamon McAnaney. It was awesome to have him on and talk about City Lacrosse, CityLax, and all they're doing in New York City to help grow the game. So be sure to tune into that interview coming up. But man, how's your weekend, Greg? I mean, how's your past couple of weeks? I haven't seen you. How you been?
Yeah, man. We got to get back to the weekly grind. I can't keep going these long trips. The group chat, the Rise Up group chat is just feel like, oh, did you see this guy signed here? Oh, we got to talk about that. When? In like 3 weeks. I've been good, man. Just grinding, getting ready for the summer, helping all the Founders League schools with their face-off situations. And then I just signed my oldest son, Jackson, up for lacrosse. He's officially going to start lacrosse this spring.
Let's go.
So he'll be playing at LMYL Youth. Right across the street at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. My wife is like, what's wrong with you? But this is the gift of lacrosse. And then, a whole bunch of stuff has happened in the PLL world and the college world, which I'm really excited about. I'm also going to be taking my son to his first Penn State lacrosse game this Saturday when the boys are on the island at the house that Scotty built, MacArthur High School, to take it on Marquette. Little known fact, Marquette's face-off man is Luke Williams, who is the younger brother of Syracuse star Ben Williams. Ben Williams is the all-time face-off leader at Syracuse. One of my first kids that I ever coached, and his brother is the face-off guy at Marquette. So it'll be a cool weekend. How about you, man?
Yeah, I saw that their game was on Long Island, and I followed Penn State on Instagram. I saw their graphic about how many people were from Long Island and they're coming home, and I was like, who are they playing? And I saw Marquette. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm sure there's a lot
smart hotbed moment.
Yeah, Penn State has so many people from the Philly area, but I'm sure it's easier for a lot of parents to get.
Well, once when I played at Penn State. 0206. Holy shit. Glenn Field was the head coach there. He was about 80 years old when he was the coach. And everybody who went to Penn State at that time was a really good athlete who came from Penn State, came from Pennsylvania, but not necessarily a top-tier lacrosse guy. As soon as Tambo got there, that changed, man, and Long Island immediately became a recruiting pipeline. So it's funny. People are like, oh, they're going for a spring break game in Long Island. It's cold as shit. What are they doing? But it's brilliant because you get to go play in front of a recruiting pipeline area. And now kids are going to see this and hopefully you get a big win. And now they're going to come to Penn State. So, planting the seeds.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. My weeks have been busy as well. I've been going back and forth to Villanova. I called some of their games. 2 weeks ago, I organized a nice party bus from New York City to go to the game against Hofstra. It was nice to enjoy the game from the crowd and not the press box for a week. We had a blast. We had a really, really good time. We had a great showing from our alumni, so that was great to see. I know the team appreciated it. But I got a nice golf trip planned coming up in a couple of days. I'll be taking off of work, heading down to Florida with my pops, playing some golf. I haven't played in a while, so I'm going to be a little rusty. But starting the season early, that's all what it's all about. I'm trying to get better every summer.
Godspeed. Are you gonna go for a few jogs with your dad?
So I signed up for a half marathon coming up.
So, how many miles is a half marathon?
13.1. 13.1, yeah.
Okay. So that is 13 miles exactly more than I will ever run at a time.
I've done one before, and my girlfriend, she's gotten into running since, she graduated college. She played girls lacrosse in college, and she's not like me playing in men's league still. So she's taken up running. She did the New York City Marathon last fall. And so she, said, hey, there's a half marathon coming up in New York City. You want to run it? And I reluctantly said yes. But so she's getting us on a training regimen. The weather hopefully starts turning, and we can run up and down the West Side Highway here in New York City. And
your girls got you on a training regimen. She's a keeper, dude. Good for you.
She sent me this Excel doc today. She's like, all right, these are the days that we're running these amount of miles. And I was like, okay, sure. We'll see.
Good for you. That's awesome.
But before we kick it over to our interview with Eamon McAnaney, I'd be remiss if I don't shout out our awesome sponsors. First off, Rowback. I got my Rowback hat on. It's coming with me down to my golf trip to Florida. Got plenty of my golf shirts packed in my bag as well. They'll be keeping me nice and breathable down in that humidity in Florida. And also, we'd love to shout out Greg and Scotty's Face-Off Academy and 42 Performance. They're always grinding, working with kids, getting kids better, providing kids with, an opportunity to play in college like we talk about with Eamon later on. And that's what it's all about. If you haven't followed Greg or Scotty on Instagram, make sure you give them a follow and tune in to see what they're doing with their clientele. But with that...
Yeah, shameless plug, actually. Shameless plug. We are going to announce, as of the time this is going to air, this will happen after we announce this tomorrow. But... this is the new, I'm going to get you one of these, Danny.
Please.
This is the Academy side tie. Remember the old Power Grip?
Mm-hmm.
Same exact grooves, aluminum, titanium, and scandium.
I love it.
$80.
I'll be the coolest kid in men's league. I'll be the coolest kid in men's league with that.
I mean, damn, coolest kid ever. It's going to be awesome. So, yeah, man, at thefaceoffacademy.com, $80.
Love that. Go check it out, faceoffacademy.com. If you're a face-off guy in need of training or you just want a really cool shaft, go check it out, $80. But without further ado, we're turning it over to our interview with Eamon McAnaney, telling us a little bit about his involvement in CityLax. This guy is a legend. So cool to finally meet him for myself. I know it's cool for you to reconnect with him and talk about some of the old days when he was calling your Lizards games. So without further ado, here's Eamon McAnaney. Hello, everybody. We have a very special guest on the podcast today, Eamon McAnaney. And if you are a Lax fanatic like Greg and I, you know who he is. But Eamon, why don't you give our listeners a little introduction about yourself, and then we're going to get into some topics and touch on CityLax, the program that you're super involved in.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm on CityLax is a nonprofit organization in New York City, which really is the trailblazer when it comes to growing the game in urban areas. We've been around for nearly 20 years. Matt Levine started it right here in New York City. And at the time, there were maybe 2 public school lacrosse programs in all of New York City. Now, thanks to CityLax, Matt's hard work, and all the donations that we've received, we're up to more than 70 programs across the 5 boroughs, boys, girls, JV, varsity, and now our real emphasis and mission is on middle schools because we want to get the sticks into the hands of these young students as early as possible so that they can maybe hit the ground running in high school and play beyond high school.
70. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, you used to live here, so you know how big New York City is. So when you talk about Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, Queens, and of course Manhattan, we have plenty of teams all over the place. And it's really amazing when you get to know these teams. They play for a championship. There's a boys and a girls New York City public school championship. And, Greg, I know you played at Springfield, what that meant in, Pennsylvania to play those Delaware County schools and, work their way through the state tournament. And Danny, I'm sure it was the same way in Massachusetts. And that's what we have now here in New York City, even though, a whole lot of people don't know about it. So we're trying to, spread the word.
So Eamon, it's funny you say that because I moved to New York City about 1.5 years ago, and I'd love to get more involved with this. I've been involved with the ULAX, doing some high school coaching with them, and doing some like private lessons around the city. What I hear from a ton of parents is that New York City lacrosse, there isn't much to offer at times, and they have to go to Westchester, have to go to Long Island, or I have a kid that plays for BB&L down in Jersey that commutes from the city. So I guess to go off of that, how people living in New York City, like myself that have played the game in college, how can they get involved? What's a great way to participate and give back to this foundation?
Well, you can follow us on Instagram, CityLax NYC, and of course our website, citylaxnyc.org. We have clinics all the time, and if you have a free Saturday and you hear about one of our clinics and you want to come out and help, we're also having a fundraising benefit on May 10th. Greg has been our special guest at several of those through the years. It's a great event for lacrosse people because you bump into people that you played against, played with, worked with, especially you mentioned ULAX. I mean, there's a whole culture of, it's not just the PLL. The PLL is obviously the pros, but there are a bunch of guys, 23, 24, and girls who still have a passion for lacrosse who are playing ULAX. And I've seen those games, and they're great games. And, for us, CityLax, we need to find those young people who have just moved to New York like yourself to come to our event on May 10th. So you learn more about our mission and what we do and how you can help. But the easiest way is, find out about our free clinics, which happen periodically across the city.
Yeah, that annual event is awesome. It's always a blast. You end up hearing about nothing but lacrosse stories wall to wall for like 3 hours. It's great.
I remember one time, Greg, when I did it, they had me on before I was on the board and working for them. They had me as like a special guest to sort of give a recap of the college season as it was going and some predictions. And as you can imagine, people weren't quiet. They wanted to, they paid their money. They wanted to meet up with friends. And Greg finally helped me out and said, "Yo, he's talking over here."
God, I was so annoyed. When I go to weddings or bar mitzvahs or anything, someone's talking to everybody. I'm like, dude,
exactly.
This is not your event. It's theirs.
Exactly. He's holding the mic for a reason. Leave him alone.
Oh, that's awesome,
man.
So how about you tell us a little bit more about, what started you to get into this? What drove your passion and for you to take on such a leadership role within CityLax?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Manhattan, I'm a class of 1983, grade school, 87 high school. So there was no lacrosse in New York City. So I didn't pick up, I never would have played lacrosse if I didn't go to prep school. I went to the Hill School, which is near where Greg grew up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and fell in love with the sport. So then when I came back and started living and working in New York as an adult, I found out about CityLax, I found out about Docs, which is the travel team in the Little League. And I got to know Matt Levine and John Moser. And they said, "Hey, we're having an event. It's a small fundraising event. Would you mind coming down and getting to know more about us?" And I did. It was at Stuyvesant High School. Couldn't have been more than 30 people there. And you just learned about what they were doing and, how hard it was. As you guys know, what it's like to run a clinic or a practice. Now imagine a whole public high school team in New York City. So I just saw Matt's passion and saw what was possible, and I got the bug and, started helping out, started volunteering for them. Then they asked me to join the board. And, now as sort of an ambassador, someone who's, has a recognized face around the sport of lacrosse from calling all those games. I go to these practices and, it's amazing to see Eagle Academy practice in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. And you see athletes and you see players, Columbus High School in the Bronx. I could go on and on. But, you guys go to clinics, you guys go to camps, you can tell in line drills, right? So you go to these practices at Eagle Academy. And I go, "Coach, how about that guy?" "Oh, yeah. Linebacker on the football team." "Oh, yeah. Point guard on the basketball team." So we start thinking if we can get that sticks and start teaching the game to those kids and those athletes when they're in 5th or 6th grade, come 8th, 9th grade, then all of a sudden, they can use that sport like we all use the sport of lacrosse like we all did, and the opportunities are endless. So it just sort of was blending my hometown with the sport I love and trying to make sure it grows the way it can.
Eamon, it's so cool because I remember when I used to do my clinics when I first started FOA, we used to do them at Randall's Island, Field 72, under the bridge. And I remember Jimmy Coyta coming over from Cardinal Hayes. He had just heard about us doing this. Came over, he was a junior in high school, had no idea how to play lacrosse or face off or anything. And we taught him. And then 6 months later, he gets a full ride to Drexel. And he was one of the top face off guys in the country in high school. And the same exact thing happened to me when I saw that. When that was happening, I was like, dude, imagine if these kids had the same resources.
Yeah.
Imagine if these kids were training and learning this sport when they were 6 or 7 years old, with how easy they are to coach, how grateful they are. You don't really understand how much this is the medicine game until you pass a torch to somebody who's really grateful for it. That's what brings this sport together and how small the community is. And I just love that. So, what you're doing right now is unbelievable. And you want to talk about Levine, man. You want to talk about somebody who's a Hall of Fame human being. I mean, what he has done, unbelievable.
No doubt, no doubt. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why it's been able to grow is because people believe in him, believe in the mission, and know that he is all in on this. And it really is an amazing undertaking when you take a look at it. You know, there are amazing lacrosse programs all across the country. We can rattle them off right here in New York. You know, there's Bronx and Harlem and Chicago, a program I know really well through Notre Dame, Owls Lacrosse. You know, we could rattle them all off, and they do a great job. But they're one singular program. What Matt has created now is, 70 programs and counting across New York City. And that's due to his hard work and also the loyalty to the people who believe in him and keep sticking around and contributing and supporting CityLax.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And I mentioned the ULAX. I saw and helped out with the Harlem lacrosse team at the ULAX for their high school teams, and just so fun seeing how hard these kids compete on like a Sunday in the fall when really there's not much on the line, but they just love the sport. So tell me, and you mentioned the difference about how your CityLax forms this 70 programs all putting together, growing the game within the inner city. What is the vision? What's next? What's the growth model for CityLax in the future?
Yeah, it's really to create more middle school programs. Right now, we have a handful in Queens and Brooklyn. We're working right now on raising the money to create another one in the Bronx. But that really is our next mission now, to just get to kids at a younger age to pick up the game. And in order to do that, we need more coaches, we need more clinics, and that's really our next step. It's still to fortify the 70 high school programs, create even more varsity programs. But really our focus right now is on the middle schools to get the sticks and gloves into kids' hands at an earlier age.
I think that's the thing about lacrosse too, that you hear so often, that the price to play, the barrier to entry is so high. You compare lacrosse to other sports, basically, except with the exception of hockey. Those two sports, lacrosse and hockey, is just so expensive to get involved in. When there's basketball teams where you just you show up, you need sneakers and a penny and one ball, and same with soccer, right? So what have you guys been doing to kind of drive that price down for the inner city kids so they can be involved?
Well, you can't really. I mean, you guys know the equipment game. You get breaks, no doubt. And what you really do is you have some amazing volunteers and high school kids across the country who collect stuff. I know one of our main sponsors, Relaxing, Relax, finds old sticks and gives it to kids. But, my tagline used to be, talk is cheap, growing the game isn't. We need donors. We need people to come to our fundraising benefit. And, you guys know this, and especially, Danny, now that you're in New York City, there are people out there who want to help. They just need to find out about us. They need to find out about our event, and they need to, want to contribute and become a part of what we're doing. And whether that's coming to our event or organizing a charity spin class with their friends and then a happy hour afterwards, everything helps. So we really need to spread the word so that people such as yourself who are in their 20s and have moved to New York City know that we exist. And we want your help and we need your help, whether it's financially or volunteering or, like I said, doing something, fun. Think about it. If a 26-year-old girl who played at UVA works with a 26-year-old guy who played at Penn State, and they say, hey, let's go organize a berries fundraising class for CityLax and then go hit the bars or brunch afterwards. The place would be packed. And, and boom, there you go. There's about 50 sticks coming our way. And it would be a great event. It'd be a lot of fun. So that's what I'm trying to do on social media and through interviews like this. Just spread the word that, hey, CityLax is here in New York City. You're here in New York City. You love lacrosse. We love lacrosse. Help us out and join our team.
Sibes, get people to the bar ASAP.
Absolutely. No, I'm definitely going to
even I'll come out and drink that.
I'm definitely going to connect with you after this, because I think that, first off, I'm super passionate, clearly, doing this podcast. I'm still so passionate about lacrosse. People call me a lax rat, and I love it. And I have friends that are the same way. I play for the Nyack lacrosse team in the city, and we have a bunch of people that are just looking to get involved, whether they, hit me up like saying, hey, you have any camps that I can help out with, or a group of us, we go up to Pelham on Sundays and coach Pelham youth, like 3rd and 4th graders, some bobbleheads, which is a blast. So definitely, I would love to connect with you and figure out how I can get involved for sure.
Oh, I'll infiltrate that team mailing list when this is over. That's for sure. Tell Will Yateman I'm coming for him.
I will. He just had a kid, so he's been out of the mix a little bit. I'm sure he'll be back
soon. Good for him. Congratulations. He's a great guy.
Wow. Well, hey, and we don't want to keep you too long, but man, thank you for coming on here. Thank you for spreading the message. We will absolutely be using our mouths and our reach for sure. And if you guys can, May 10th, you said, right?
Yeah, May 10th. Follow us on Instagram. We'll get the word out. But I appreciate you guys having me on. And, Greg, you said you didn't want to take up much of my time. But, this felt almost as long as one of your face-offs with the Lizards when you guys were in that tug-of-war and Clark and I were able to plan out our summer vacations.
Don't remind me. I still wake up every day and have to stretch for 30 minutes just to be active, just to exist.
Clark and I had so much fun calling those games. I know you had Clark on a couple of weeks ago. That was a blast of a podcast for me. I thought I was going down memory lane, but Greg and the other great face-off guys in the MLL would get into these tug-of-wars or battle royales in there, and they wouldn't come out, and you could tell the ball wasn't coming out. We're like, so going to Montauk after the game? What are we going to do in August?
Yeah,
but
you'd see Eamon and Quint would be having a blast, just laughing, and meanwhile I'm down there with my face in the mud, just killing myself for 90 seconds at a time against Jeff Snyder.
That's it. It was fun times for me. But guys, look, I really appreciate you having me on. This is a great podcast, and Danny, I'll definitely hit you up afterwards. But thanks for having me on to talk about CityLax. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we enjoyed having Eamon on. And we talked about it at the top of the show. We have an action-packed episode and a lot to get through for you guys today. We're going to start with the PLL and everything that's been going on in the league. First off, Sixes recap. I know we tuned in. We were, chatting about it while it was live. What did you think? Was it a success? Was it a good product? Did you think that they got as much traction as they wanted with it?
I think the PLL is all about reach, and I think they're all about engagement. And I think that you can always tell, like those of us who know, the Rabels and their thing, like we know what they're doing when they do it. So for instance, like, I thought the championship was a lot of fun to watch. I thought the championship series was fun. It was all indoors. It was really cool. I'm pumped. I made money on the Chrome, so that was great. But right after it was over, immediately you see the self-trolling by the PLL. The immediate posts. Well, a bunch of players said this is better than field lacrosse. It was like 1.5 guys said that. And then clickbait, 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 clickbait. And, they love poking the bear, man, and getting that clickbait. They like to take lacrosse Twitter and Instagram and kind of make it feed on itself. And it was, cool. I think they milked it. They did a great job. Romar Dennis, he was absolutely built for this shit. If I don't see him, here's the problem though. There's no 2-point line in the Olympics, which there absolutely should be. But there's no 2-point line in sixes in the Olympics. If it was, Romar Dennis would be team captain. But I still think he should get a very hard look because he was absolutely killer. It was no doubt he was the guy. And then it was just cool to see some guys make a name for themselves. It was cool to see a different brand of lacrosse. People that are upset about, this isn't real lacrosse. Yeah, I know. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a kind of lacrosse that we can get into the Olympics. And that's exactly what it is. And it worked out great. I love the 2-point line innovation. I thought it was awesome. And it was cool to just watch pro lacrosse at this time of year, like on a weeknight. I loved it.
That's the best part about it. Whoever you are out there, you could be the biggest hater of sixes or, the biggest advocate for it. For me, I was meeting up with one of my friends from high school who I hadn't seen in a while at a bar on a Friday night. And, he played hockey at Dartmouth. He isn't the biggest lacrosse guy. And he was sitting down. He's like, got you a beer. They have lacrosse on TV. You're going to be pumped. And I'm like, that's awesome. That this bar in New York City, because they're playing on ESPN2, has this lacrosse on. And I was like, yeah, that is awesome. So it was great to just watch some, have lacrosse to watch during the week, have it be on, some of the games be on ESPN2. So yeah, like you mentioned, the reach, that's exactly what the PL is looking for, to have, the casual fan flip on ESPN on a Thursday night, on a Friday night, and say, oh, this is fun. Look at all the goals. But off of kind of what you said, I have a couple questions for you. Romar's dominance in sixes, if that doesn't tell him that he should, shoot from, 13 and in more often, right? I know he was, stretching it to beyond that 13-yard arc in some of those Instagram highlights. But I think the biggest knock on him forever has been, right, his shooting percentage. Like if he can't hit the target, how, effective is he? He was very, very effective in sixes. So maybe he takes a look at that. Like, is that his range now?
Dude, him and Chris Gray, mate. This is what I was saying on Twitter. I was like, yo, just so everybody knows who doesn't watch lacrosse, 13 yards is not the layup these guys are making it look like. Chris Gray shoots a 13-yard two-bomb. It looked like he was taking a crease crank. It was ridiculous. Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. I think a lot of people would look at that and go, oh, man, let's see how it translates to outdoor. Maybe he should be, taking more twos, or maybe he's more accurate. Take that to like college basketball, right? Dude's lighting up threes. Most kids then go to the NBA and go, okay, I gotta increase my range so I can be a 3-point shooter in the NBA. They don't sit there and go, this is my spot. I should be killing twos from this spot. The mid-range jumper is dead, as we know. So yeah, I think mid-range jumpers from Omar seems to be the biscuit. Now, here's the question though: do you get that shot when it's a 6-on-6?
And there's two more bodies, right? Or more bodies.
Yeah, and there's a 2-point line that's extended. But dude, I was always impressed with Romar's game because first off, he's got the wiggle. I haven't seen a wiggle like that since Kyle Harrison.
I mean, even when it was the MLL and it was the 16-yard 2-point arc, he was still nailing jumpers.
Dude, jump shot 2-pointers. People. Dude, you don't know. If you're a casual lacrosse fan and you don't know what that means, go out to a football field, stand 16 yards away from the goal, and see if you can make the ball in the net in the air. Okay, it's far. And he was shooting at like 90 plus on the run, and that thing would stick in the upper 90 and then fall. It was ridiculous. So yeah, Romar did great. I thought Chris Gray did great. I thought it was great for Atlas. A lot of people are talking about the off-season moves, transactions, and stuff like that, which we'll get to, free agency. And everyone's like, "Oh, what are the Atlas going to do?" It's like, I think they're pretty good. I think they're set. Like they're just chilling. And they got a lot of young guys who can gun and go two ways. And I thought it was pretty cool. Do you see? Was there anybody in that Sixes tournament to you that helped themselves in free agency?
100%. It's Jake Carraway, and no one else is even close. 100%.
Totally agree.
And we'll get into that. Jake Carraway signed with the Water Dogs, but I mean, he went from. I've always been big on him. I watched him kill Villanova for years, playing against him, and then once I graduated, he had a couple more years. But I've always thought he's been an unbelievable player. And last year, it was head scratcher a little bit that he wasn't finding his way onto the field. And I think given the opportunity during the Sixes tournament, anyone was going to want to sign him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it is interesting because we're going to talk about it, but I don't think the Water Dogs get any, dude, they still don't get any respect. It's crazy. Like people are like, oh, this guy went to the Whip Snakes. They're going to be incredible. And I'm like, Carraway just went to the defending champions. Like, come on, dude. Like, remember that.
Totally. I mean, a midfield line of like Carraway, Courier, and Mikey Slosher. Like, I mean, who's going to get the pole? First off, and then I mean those poor shorties. But I have another question for you off of the Sixes. Just kind of how, I mean, you win something, you're going to celebrate. But as someone yourself who's won championships in the sport, how does winning a Sixes championship kind of compare to winning the summer, regular season championship, or you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a difference?
No, I hear exactly what you're saying. There's no comparison. It's awesome. It's for the boys. We're the best doing this thing. And I think for the Chrome organization, it's cool because we know how far the Chrome have climbed from where they were 2 years ago. But it was kind of like when they won, the bubble in 2020. It was like, great competitive. It was like, 6 games and no one really took seriously kind of like statistics or anything like that. Like, it's like, dude, you're just jumping out there and going after it. And it was great. But like, there's something about having an off season and training for it, getting into training camp, getting to know your team over the course of, in the MLL, it was a 14-game regular season, going through the ups and downs, the bus rides, all that stuff. And then coming out on top was more about, look what we were able to survive rather than we're just better than everybody for a week. And I think I'm not taking anything away. It's awesome. It's cool. I can tell you right now, though, if you were to ask any player in lacrosse, would you rather win that or would you rather win the PLL championship? If they don't say PLL championship, then they're probably something wrong. They're screwed. So I can tell you from experience that that's absolutely, there's no comparison to that.
I completely agree. And I think, no discredit to, the guys on the Chrome, but I think exactly what you said, you hit the nail on the head. And my last question around sixes, if you're a Whip Snakes fan, are you concerned with them going, defeated in the bubble, or not the bubble, excuse me, in the sixes tournament? I know Brad Smith went off. He had, a great little tournament, but other than that, they were really just kind of going through the motions in some of the games that I watched.
No, I think this is one of those things where if there's something positive, if you won, you take the positive and you go, oh, awesome. Like for the Chrome, I think this is an awesome stepping stone where they say, yo, we won this. This is part of our program now forever. Like this organization won this thing and we have one of them. So we know what it's like to win something and we're going to build on this momentum and it's going to be positive. Whereas if you're the Whip Snakes, what do the Whip Snakes win with? The Whip Snakes win with an impeccable goalie, high face-off percentage, Mike Earhart, best lacrosse player on the planet for the last couple of years, in my opinion, and a lockdown defense, defensive organization that works team defense like, very few can do. Can't do any of that in sixes. Can't face off. Bernard, and their starting goalie, Phipps did a pretty good job, but he was getting pelted from 4 yards out for a whole week. God bless him. So yeah, I think if you're the Whip Snakes, you're just kind of rolling your eyes going, hey man, it was great to run with the boys, but this isn't a game. So
I actually have one last question about the sixes before we move on to PLL.
All right, but this is the last one.
This is the last one, I swear. Do you see this as something the PLL will continue to do or something that might fizzle out?
I hope so, man. I think what this did was it did a great job. If I'm World Lacrosse, I'm ecstatic. Because I had tweeted about this. I was like, look, man, everybody is hoping that I don't know what they think when they're looking at me about sixes. I think they're just assuming that I'm going to hate it because there's no face-offs. I don't give a shit, man. My career's over. I don't need a face-off. I just want lacrosse. I want any brand of lacrosse. I watch indoor lacrosse. I love the NLL. I love watching. If I see Canadian box, I'll watch it. Sixes, I'll watch it. I don't care. I just love lacrosse. So I hope they keep doing it because I think what this did was a lot of people who didn't know what sixes was going to look like, they all said the same shit. It's indoor lacrosse, but outside. It's not. Totally different. And I think they looked at it and were like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I think if you're a casual fan at a bar and you turned it on, you're like, yo, this is pretty cool. This is fast. Totally. Now, if you're a lax head, look, I love the strategy involved in lacrosse. I will preach this till they take me off the air. PLL rules are the best version of lacrosse I've ever seen, and I love them. So, yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I do hope they keep doing it because I think it's pretty cool.
I think, too, it gave a lot of young players who might have not been able to see the field last summer an opportunity to show that, they can hang in this league. I look at like that kid O'Rourke on the Atlas could absolutely sling the pill. And now Pressler is going to be the coach of the Atlas, right? From Bryant.
Yeah. I also think there were some young goaltenders. Yep. Drake Porter. If you watch those games, now here's one thing you could totally take away from this is guys who can rip the ball, obviously, who have wheels, but also got goaltenders. This is, trial by fire, but Drake Porter came in and looked like he's been playing for 5 years in the league. So I think if you're looking at stock, there were some dudes that made some impressions there. And I think it helped their stock for sure. So yeah, I think there's guys that helped themselves out, but I also think some guys blew you away. And I think Drake Porter.
Absolutely. And going off of that, we touched upon it with Jake Carraway, but a ton of player movement, a ton of new signings going on in the PLL. Before we kind of get into player by player, team by team, do you think this new kind of format that the PLL is incorporating is I know their goal was to be more transparent in the way that the deals are happening with the cap and how more player positive, I guess, more player power. Do you think that's been a success so far?
I think this is a gigantic step in the right direction. Now, for people who don't understand, like for years in the MLL, for years, every player was asking the same thing. I personally was like, look, I have another job. I love being a professional lacrosse player. I know I'm not going to make $1 million. All I'm asking is that you don't make this the biggest pain in the ass ever. I would like to know what I'm worth and what I'm getting paid. I would like that check to come on time. I would like to make sure that if I get hurt, I'm taken care of. And I would like to know that if you don't think I'm going to dress, that you tell me before midnight the day before the game. If I'm not playing, I would love for you to tell me why, how I can get on the field. And if I can't, I would love for you to respect that and help me find another team. Those are the things guys always want. You have a lot. You have all of those now. You have player contracts. I mean, Dan Aristides, he knows everybody's. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he knows what everyone's having for breakfast. I mean, it's public. He does a great job.
Is it public though? He just got. I saw he got a little pee-pee whacked and said, "Stop posting them."
Well, I think people were irked that he was breaking the news before it could be broken, and I get that. I get why. I get both sides of that. Some people are upset.
No one's ever said that to Woj or Schefter.
I totally agree. And here's where I kind of get in a little bit of a gray area with people on this is we're not the NBA yet. We are really far away from that. Okay. We're old. Listen, the PLL, before the PLL happened in 2019, the highest paid person in the MLL for a decade was $16,000. That was a max contract, and only 2 guys were allowed to have it on a team. So now, immediately overnight, the minimum was 25 grand with health insurance. So that's huge. That's awesome. But we're not at $30 million contracts. We're not Lamar, asking for 200 guaranteed. So you still have to play, because if I'm the PLL, I still want control over how the news is broken. I still want my news center to be breaking this news because it helps my ink blot, my reach. Now, do I think it's amazing for lacrosse that a guy like Dan wants to dedicate his time to caring about that stuff? Absolutely. And that's why I get upset when some PLL guys give him a hard time on Twitter. It's like, oh, what does this guy think he is? It's like, he's obviously a guy who loves sport and he's helping you.
100%.
So yeah, I get both sides of that. But anyway, off that, like, I think, with the player movement, I think this is, it's more transparent. Players have control now. You used to have to hope that you were going to be the guy on a team, or you were put in a player pool. And I'll give people an example. I don't want to talk too much about this, but in 2008, I played for the Dragons. 4 of those teams folded after the recession. So in 2009, the MLL restructured the entire league. They put everybody in a player pool and then divvied you out onto one of the remaining teams based on your geographical location. I was kind of the odd man out on faceoffs, and they started a team in Toronto. And they said, Greg, you're going to go play for Toronto. And I was like, I just signed the paperwork to create an LLC to start my training business in New York City. I'm not going to Toronto. And they were like, well, it's all good because they only want Canadians anyway. So you're going to the player pool. Okay, great. I get picked up by Chicago. I was like, that doesn't help me either. So I call Chicago. I say, hey, no problem. That at that point, Chicago was the worst team in the league every year. I was like, guys, I can't come out there. No hard feelings, whatever. Okay, cool. You know what that Chicago did? They put me on the did not report list, meaning that they had my rights.
Yep.
No one was allowed to pick me up. So when the Lizards came calling, the Cannons came calling, even Denver, like towards the end of the summer, they would not talk about getting rid of me because they wanted to teach me a lesson. I lost a whole freaking year of my career over that. Now, that can't happen anymore because Twitter will explode. Everybody's like, well, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing to this guy. So I think what the PLL has done is great, and I love that they're incrementally adding these things. They didn't do free agency year 1, and they're adding. And I love the 2-year contract thing. Gives guys a lot of power.
My biggest gripe, my only gripe with it, as a fan, I would love to see the numbers. They talk about being transparent. They talk about what the salary cap is per team now. I'd love to see how much your guys are worth. And I think
that has to be public somewhere.
I don't think I figure it would come across my Twitter feed at some point, probably from Arestia, but I haven't seen it. I'd love for that to be public knowledge. I'm sure it's not yet because it probably would create, internal conflicts with the league. But we'll get there, right? We're going on the right. You said, they're taking the steps. We're getting there. And like we said, there's a ton of signings that just came out. In your opinion, I can list you off some, Adam Gittleman, Jeff Trainer, they leave the Archers for the Cannons. Will Manny left the Archers for the Whipsnakes. Jake Carraway, we talked about how big of a Sixes tournament he had. He signs with the defending champs Water Dogs. Holman signs with Cannons. Finn Sullivan returns to the Cannons. Matt Reese with the Cannons. Cannons are making waves. They must have heard our boos from the cheap seats that they're not doing anything, because they're doing stuff now.
It's funny though, because we were all on here going, they just need to just a small little injection. Ross would be like, nah, screw it, everyone's out.
And I'll tell you what my favorite signing has been is Mac O'Keefe signing with the Archers to reunite with his Penn State teammate, Grant Ament. I mean, that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun to watch. Is that your favorite signing as well?
No, it's my second favorite signing. I think the Archers did a great job of, okay, Ratliff retires. That nucleus is gone, and Holman's going to be the new coach. We know his son would love to play for his dad. Let's make moves now, and we're going to basically just inject a new group of guys in here, but we're not going to lose what we got. Like, we're going to have the same thing. O'Keefe with Ament is the most electric 1-2 combination in college lacrosse history.
Correct.
And it's going to correlate beautifully to this. Now, my favorite signing was Jake Falk going to the Cannons.
I love that. It's not even in our notes, so...
You know why? Because I don't think it's been officially announced. But I know for a fact it happened. And I applaud Coach Holman. I applaud the Cannons for making this move. Because like I said, people are always asking, but there's so many college face-off guys coming out. Dude, you have no idea who's going to be good. This thing is totally different. Face-off style, everything, rules, all that nonsense. And you have a guy who has proven himself already. And then he's playing against the best face-off man in the world right now. He's never going to see the field. So let him go in there and do his thing. I love it.
That's huge, and love giving some face-off love. I love the O'Keefe signing with the Archers, and I also love the Carraway signing just because I feel like he played himself into it. I think there's a couple people still not signed as of this recording, that kind of some interesting players that have had some huge success in the league. I think Justin Gunnerding's one of them. I think Dan Bucaro, another one of the Atlas guys, is another one of them. So we'll keep our ear to the ground, try to see where they fall.
I think the Cannons are going to be so good. I think an example of why they're going to be so good is Brody Merrill re-signed today.
Yeah,
Brody Merrill agreed to come back for one more year, like we knew he would. I knew he would come back for one more year. I just didn't know if it was going to be the Cannons or not. And he obviously wants to stay because, everything around him, and then you add a veteran leader, one of the greatest defenders, if not the greatest defender of all time. That's pretty awesome.
Well, listen, so that Cannons attack line is going to be Holman, Lyle, and Cav.
I'll be honest, this is what surprised me, is I imagined Will Manny scoring 700 goals with all eyes on Lyle if he was on the Cannons. But with Cav there, it wasn't possible.
Right.
But, dude, if you're Lyle, you're just looking at your phone for 5 days straight, just smiling like, look at these weapons. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool.
And I think the Cannons had to do this in free agency because the lack of draft picks stemming from the Rabel trade.
They look at the juxtaposition, right? So they are being super aggressive right now. And then down here, the Atlas are like, we were like third best team in the whole league last year, and we got a whole bunch of picks. Like, we're just chilling.
And this is one of the deepest college classes, probably, with the fifth year the extra year.
This year and next year will both be very deep.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that's a great recap of the PLL sixes and the free agency. A lot of waves. We'll be sure to update you with anything else that comes out. Make sure you tune into us to be your source of all the PLL news and happenings. And we can move on to college lacrosse. And, we talked about it. Your Nittany Lions, my Wildcats, are absolutely crushing it. They played first game of the season. We talked about it. Big win for Nova. But now, Nova Nation is Penn State's biggest fan. We need you guys to keep winning and keep crushing, make that win, a signature win come May.
Yeah, we need you to stay in the top 20, so it's a good win, good loss. Yeah, I think. Oh, look, Penn State. We have Penn State group chat, guys I played with back in the 06 era. My class was the first class to ever go to an NCAA tournament for Penn State, and we went there twice while I was there. We won 2 conference championships, and we're just so proud because we dissect this stuff. Like, we know every name on the roster. We know exactly where these kids came from. And we were all talking this year. We were hyped because we were like, yo, the transfer portal, Chase Mullins coming over. I think Chase Mullins came into the season a little out of shape, so he didn't play much the first 2 or 3 games. He comes in and starts at Yale, totally different season. And this offense, when you give them that many chances, they're veteran-laden. So it's pretty awesome to watch. Now, even I couldn't have predicted that we were going to roll in the Ivy League like we did. This is our first ever program's Ivy League championship. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Dude, those Trainer brothers are so fun to watch.
Yeah.
16 and 22, so fun to watch. Great players.
They're great. And the defense has been playing great. Plus Penn State basketball is in the tournament. I mean, this has been a good day to be a Nittany Lion, man. Good week.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There's been, I think a lot of things have stayed constant this year so far in college lacrosse, but then there's also been some kind of eye-opening results and shakeups. I think, you have UVA still number 1. They were preseason number 1. They haven't given it up yet. Maryland hit some bumps in the road. I know they have 2 losses, but one was a triple overtime loss to Notre Dame, who's number 2 right now. And we talked about it, a couple podcasts ago. They are complete wagon. We talked about how they were snubbed last year, or, quotation snubbed. And they were coming back, on a revenge tour. And they just absolutely gave it to Ohio State.
Dude, I told you guys when I was out there in preseason, I was like, yo, this team is ready to make that next jump. And, look, if you're Maryland, like, this is why you play in the Big Ten or the ACC. Maryland can lose to Loyola. Okay, learning experience. They can lose a triple OT to Notre Dame. They're going to play in the Big Ten. They got Penn State. They got Michigan. Every team in the Penn State's ranked, right? And the Big Ten's ranked. So, same thing in the ACC. Like, Virginia, Notre Dame, you're going to be able to see that game from space. That is going to be a slobber knocker, and I can't wait for it.
Same here. There's some big games coming up too. I think Maryland has Virginia coming up this weekend, so it will come out by the time of the podcast. That is going to be an awesome game. I know they played last year. I think they played in Philly. They had a neutral site.
Yeah, dude, this is going to be awesome. It's a great face-off matchup. 2 awesome offenses. Virginia can hang 20 on anybody.
Totally.
It honestly seems like sometimes, like, almost like the Peyton Manning era of the Colts. It's like, do not let them get it on offense. Shit. Like, they're absolutely going to score. 100% going to score. So yeah, you have to play very mistake-free, and you have to win face-offs against Virginia. And I feel like that's where we're going to find out if Notre Dame's the best team in the country. Can Will Lynch hang with Petey LaSalla? If he can win 50% of those face-offs when those 2 teams play, then I feel like Notre Dame can win that game. But yeah, so it's awesome. And also Jacksonville doing their thing again. I feel like St. Joe's has gotten exposed a little bit. Strength of schedule went up this year. They're eating the lunch they wanted, and it's not working out. So yeah, it's been interesting to see some teams going up and coming in. My biggest surprise of the year, Ohio State so far. Shocked. I thought Ohio State, hands down, was going to give Maryland everything they could handle for the Big Ten title this year. So we'll see if Coach Myers and his staff can right that wagon.
I completely agree with, first off, Jacksonville. Shout out to them. They beat Duke for the 2nd year in a row. That's, a signature program win. And Duke right now is rolling. They're 3rd in the country. Their 1 loss is to Jacksonville. I agree with Ohio State. And what I'm interested to see in the Big Ten, how the Big Ten's going to shake out, is I don't think Rutgers is as real as their number 6 ranking is right now. They have a loss to Army, And really, their only good win is over a 2-3 Princeton team. I think my biggest surprise of the year is Princeton being 2-3, Georgetown being 2-3, and UPenn being 2-3. All teams that I'm pretty sure were top 7 preseason. Granted, like you mentioned, they have really hard strength of schedule. What's unfortunate for the Ivy League this year is the Ivy League didn't cash in on these out of conference wins. Yale's the only team doing that. Yale just beat Denver. And Yale's, off to a hot start with their only loss being to Penn State. So the Ivy League isn't going to be able to kill each other this year and get, these solid wins when really only beating Yale is going to kind of count for something when it gets into Ivy League play. But shout out Dartmouth. Dartmouth undefeated right now, 4-0. They're building something up in Hanover, New Hampshire. They have UNC this weekend. They'll be tested, but got to give them a shout out for being 4-0. I think they've been kind of They've been a doormat for a while in that Ivy League, and I'm excited for them to play spoiler to a few teams this year.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think
the great face-off unit at Dartmouth too.
I saw some stat that they lead the country in time of possession this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, what's your take on those 3 teams I mentioned? UPenn, Princeton, Georgetown, all sitting at 2-3.
I think at any point, I'm a little bit down on UPenn. I don't think. Here's the problem with UPenn. The difference between UPenn and those other two is that UPenn doesn't have the face-off presence to keep them in games.
I thought they have a Sari. Isn't he a pretty good face-off guy?
I'm not saying he's bad. Chris Arceri's good. Chris Arceri's super athletics, younger brother of Gerard who played at Penn State. Yep. But I mean, they were like 30% against St. Joe's. They were like about 40% against Penn State. When you're going in the Ivy League, you're going against Yale, who has a much improved face-off unit. I think Ramsey has fixed his stance and is better than he's ever been. You got Tyler Sandoval at Princeton. You got Myers at Dartmouth. I mean, these are teams that have legitimate stud face-off guys, and it's hard to compete in that league. And I think his league, and also Jack Cascadden. Shout out to Jack Cascadden, freshman at Cornell. Kid is 6'4", 220. Okay, he is a monster, and it's starting to look more and more like a 2 or 3 team postseason league.
Yeah, I mean, those 1-2 Virginia Notre Dame really have kind of set the bar, and they set it very high. I think, being a Villanova fan and following the Big East probably the closest, I think that Georgetown is super eye-opening because last year they were, I thought, just an absolute wagon. I know they lost first round to Delaware in the tournament, but Delaware played the best game they could have played, and they came out on top. But Georgetown was rolling through teams last year, and they brought in another influx of grad transfers and who are studs. Tucker Dordovic's a stud, and he I think with a lot of people would consider having a little bit of a down year for maybe someone who they thought was going to be a front runner for the finalist of the Tewaaraton. I think they're playing him at attack, and I think he only has like 1 or 2 assists on the year. I think, he'd benefit if they move him back to, midi, his natural position, and maybe, frees up from a pole, gets the offense spinning a little bit more. But I mean, I don't know. It's been an interesting team to watch. I know they made a goalie change. They're looking for answers, and Warren's a fantastic coach. He's done such a great job turning that Georgetown program around. And, they're the class of the Big East right now. They knocked off Denver. They've won the Big East the past 3 years, I believe. So I'm interested to watch, how those teams like Georgetown, Denver, how they progress for when it comes time for them to play Villanova, because they're gonna get everyone's best effort.
Well, I think you and I both played college lacrosse, and who you are in the first 2 or 3 weeks is absolutely not who you are in the second half of the year. I think injuries play into account. Chemistry is the biggest thing. And what people don't realize who haven't played college sports is, well, maybe there's something in the locker room. Maybe there's something off the field. Maybe there's somebody struggling off the field with something. You never know what's happening. I think that Georgetown is going to absolutely right their ship. I think it's just when you bring in that many grad transfers, like Rutgers is a perfect example. since the waiver, I don't think anybody has experienced the bump that Rutgers has, because they're bringing in guys for 1 year and then a whole new team comes in the next year. Now, last year it worked out great. This year, we'll see. So it's interesting. This is the first time I've seen Penn State dabble with the transfer portal, and it's paid off so far. So yeah, it's interesting. People have to understand chemistry is everything. And you can't just say, oh, this kid's the best attackman, he's the best midi, and now they're on this team and they're going to be awesome. It doesn't work that way. Like for instance, in the PLL, Eddie Glazner got re-signed by the Redwoods. I thought he was the most important offseason acquisition for them, is to make sure you keep the communication center of your defense down. If he went somewhere and they put in another stud takeaway check defender, that defense wouldn't have been as good. So people have to understand this is all about push and pull and chemistry.
Totally. And I think that they will right the ship. But I just don't know if obviously it's only 5 games in for, I'm going to keep harping on those 3 teams, UPenn, Princeton, and Georgetown. It's 5 games in, not the end of the world. But, the ship has to, get right sooner rather than later. Obviously, you can make a push for, winning the AQ by winning your league. But you got to start banking some good quality wins.
Well, this is also kind of the last week of out of conference. Mm-hmm. So you're going to find out who's who very quickly. I think, for instance, Ohio State is going to do well in the Big Ten when they play Big Ten teams. I think Penn State has done a lot for their resume already. And as long as they do decently in the Big Ten, I think we'll see them come tournament time. The ACC, man, that's something different entirely. Those guys, every team can kill each other this year. My prediction at the beginning of the year was that UNC might be the odd man out this year in that conference. Notre Dame is so good. Virginia is so good. I think Duke is that third best team right now.
I agree.
On paper. And we're going to find out this weekend.
Yeah.
So, those 2 teams are going to battle and we're going to find out. So, dude, it's been an exciting season. Some surprises. Give me something that you think is going to be a back end of the season surprise from what we're looking at right now.
I think that my back end season surprise, I think a team is going to get the championship weekend who you might not expect, like an unseeded team. The team that has to travel first weekend is going to make it to Final Four weekend. I don't know who that might be.
To happen.
Excuse me?
I said that's a pretty good year for that to happen.
Yeah. I think a team like maybe Army, a team like Jacksonville, a team like, I don't know, even like Loyola could be going unseeded. I don't know. But I think I love Army, watching them play. I think even UMass could make a push for that 8-10. They played, they got stomped a little bit by Yale, but I think UMass is such a solid program under Canella over there, and I think they just grind teams down and find ways to win. They get a big win every year, it seems like. I think they, have an opportunity to make some noise in the postseason. How about you? Turn that question around for you.
I think Princeton and Ohio State are going to turn things around and make a serious run. I think they're both going to be ranked pretty high by the end of the season. There's so much talent, and I believe so much in both of those coaching staffs that once they get into conference games, I feel like they're both going to handle business. So I'm fascinated to see how this thing goes. I also think what your prediction was right, but I also think it's going to be a unranked but possibly common name.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, like at Georgetown, it's like, oh, they're unranked. Oh, didn't expect to see them. I think that's something that we can look out for, because the early season is great for stat padding when it comes to but everybody remembers, like, if you start the season 4-0, that's way worse if you start losing than if you end the season 4-0.
Yeah.
Because then you're always ranked higher. So we'll see.
In 2018, my senior year, we made the tournament as an at-large bid. And we were crawling down the stretch. We had so many injuries. We were, throwing kids out, taking face-offs that I've never faced off before because both our face-off guys were hurt. We started a backup goalie against Duke in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And I think that a lot of people knocked us down the stretch because we crawled. They're like, recency bias, they, are fading instead of peaking, but luckily we got in. It was fun to play in the tournament, but I think that's a great point. I think it's a great point. I think it's a big year. I think where there is so much parity, where there's going to be more critiques to the selection committee, a lot of unhappy fan bases, towards the end of the year. What do you think? I meant to bring this up. We were talking about the Big Ten. You didn't mention Hopkins at all. I think a lot of people are, saying Hopkins is back. They had a little bit of a downturn, Millman transitioning, filling in for Petro. What do you think about Hopkins? Can they make a run?
I think Hopkins is still a year or two away from being who they're going to be.
Yeah.
Hopkins to me is the Big Ten version of Duke. Actually, I think UNC is a better example. I think they're the Big Ten version of UNC, where I won't bet on them. I have no idea what Hopkins is going to get off that bus.
Yeah.
Is it going to be Pete Milliman's in your face, kill everybody mentality Hopkins? Or is it going to be the guys who can't catch and throw for a second and then it costs them? They're face-off guys, you have no idea what they're going to do. They're all going to clamp every time, but if they're on the whistle, they're going to go over 50%. If they're not on the whistle, they get pumped. So, yeah, it's a fascinating team for me. Hopkins, I see definitely getting some kind of upset. I could see them taking out Maryland, but in the game. I could see them beating Penn State.
Yeah.
But then losing to Rutgers in Michigan, and you just never know who's going to get off that bus. So yeah, Hopkins is fascinating to me. I love that coaching staff. Coach Kesterer, by the way, Jamison Kesterer needs to be a head coach. Is that the guy who's
in the Instagram clips of him mic'd up at practice? Yeah, dude, always wearing shorts.
Awesome. Jamison Kesterer is one of my favorite human beings in our sport. The fact that guy is not a Division I head coach blows my mind. He's been successful everywhere he's been as an assistant. I love that guy. So yeah, great staff.
I think that, rounds it up for us, breaking it down, catching up on some of the college games we missed. But, we're at the point week 6 in the season where, there's a lot of questions of, who's the best. I think we have some answers, but a lot of unanswered questions still too. And be sure, to tune into our podcast. We'll be giving you updates, predictions, who we think is going to make the distance, who we think is going to have a good upset. I'm excited, like you mentioned, to get into these conference plays. I think it's going to be cool too with this conference realignment, the new A10 conference. I think it's, we have a lot of great lacrosse in store for us ahead, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, I don't want to get off here without saying one quick tidbit about the NLL. Okay, right now, Jake Withers is on pace to go 80% this season at the dot for Halifax. Wow. Right now, also, Trevor Baptiste hasn't lost a face-off in 3 games.
What?
He's like 50 for 50 in his last 2 games.
That's
astounding. So I had to shout out the boys. The best 2 face-off guys in the indoor league by far having their way. So congratulations, boys. And we'll keep you posted on that.
Big shout out to them. And that concludes episode 21 of Rise Up the Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to TorchPro's YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you hit that download button. Thank you again to Eamon McAnaney for being an unbelievable guest. Shout out CityLax. Get involved if you live in the New York City area. I'm going to be getting involved. I'm going to be shouting out some feelers and knocking on some doors for my man Eamon. So thank you. That's going to be it for us.
Yeah, and if you show up and my boy Eamon's emceeing, make sure you shut up and listen. To the moon!
Love it. Take care, Greg.